In the late 15th century, a young Roman was walking along the Appian Hill when the ground simply gave way. He tumbled through a cleft in the earth and landed in a pitch-black, dirt-filled cavern. Word of this underground space spread quickly. Soon, artists like Raphael were having themselves lowered on ropes, holding torches up to the ceiling to study what they found. What they saw were perfectly preserved, intricate frescoes and geometric patterns painted centuries before. As excavators eventually cleared the space, they realized those artists had been crawling near the ceiling of the domus aurea, the golden house of Emperor Nero, a massive structure packed to the vaults with earth. Rome typically celebrated and preserved its grandest monuments, yet the empire spent enormous resources to intentionally bury its most architecturally advanced building beneath thousands of tons of dirt. The answer starts in 64 AD. A devastating fire swept through Rome, burning for 6 days and leveling a massive portion of the city's center. With the ashes barely cool, the land was primed for public rebuilding. Instead, the emperors seized the newly scorched real estate to build an impossibly vast private pleasure palace right in the middle of the capital. This was Nero. He envisioned a structure so grand it would immortalize his reign and elevate him entirely above the Roman Senate, regardless of how aggressively it alienated the public. To match a project born from absolute ego, his architects couldn't rely on traditional scale. They had to discard the existing rules of construction and invent an entirely new way of engineering physical space. Up to this point, grand architecture relied heavily on the Greek post and lintel system. You place straight stone beams across vertical columns. The problem is gravity. A flat crossbeam can only stand a short distance before its own weight causes the center to crack under strain. To build the sprawling, open rooms Nero demanded, the architects turned to Roman concrete. By pouring this liquid material into a continuous curve, they created the arch. The curve directs the heavy structural load safely downward along the sides, allowing for much wider spaces. Executing this required a massive physical undertaking. Builders constructed enormous wooden molds in the exact shape of the desired rooms, poured the liquid rock over them, and waited. When the wood was stripped away, a solid freestanding shell remained. The pinnacle of this technology sits deep inside the domus aurea, the octagonal room. It is an immense, multi-sided hall that feels entirely open. Looking at the physics, this dome shouldn't be able to stand. The entire center of the ceiling is missing. But because the concrete shell continuously thrusts its weight outward and downward into the thick support pillars, the structure is perfectly stable without a keystone. That deliberate circular void in the roof is called an oculus. It allowed a single focused shaft of sunlight to enter the room and track across the walls throughout the day, turning the space into a giant sundial. These soaring concrete shells were then heavily decorated. The walls were covered in brilliant gold leaf, encrusted with gems, and filled with art pillaged from across the empire, designed to visually overwhelm anyone who walked inside. The domus aurea operated as a psychological weapon. By controlling the light, the sheer volume of the rooms, and the sensory overload, Nero engineered an environment that projected unchallengeable authority over his guests. But that level of hubris had strict political cost. The sheer scale of the palace alienated the Roman elite and exhausted the treasury, triggering a revolt that forced Nero to take his own life in 68 AD. He left his successors with a toxic symbol of tyranny sitting squarely in the middle of Rome. Yet, because of that revolutionary concrete, the walls were too thick and solid to easily tear down. A few decades later, Emperor Trajan found a brute force solution. He ordered his engineers to strip the valuables, seal the palace doors, and pack the pristine vaulted rooms entirely with dirt. Those packed rooms then served as the massive foundation for a sprawling new public bath complex built right on top. Before that, Emperor Vespasian tackled Nero's sprawling private artificial lake. He drained the water and repurposed the massive footprint to build the ultimate public entertainment venue, the Colosseum. Burying the palace was a calculated act of state-sponsored erasure. The subsequent emperors effectively scrubbed Nero's defining monument from the skyline and physically returned the stolen land to the citizens of Rome. While the Roman state successfully buried the Golden House in darkness for over 1,000 years, they couldn't suppress the technological leap it represented. The concrete vaulting and the precise engineering of the oculus pioneered inside Nero's palace provided the direct blueprint for Rome's greatest surviving marvel. Just half a century later, those exact principles were scaled up to build the Pantheon. Once architects understood how to manipulate space with concrete, the limitations of straight stone beams were gone forever. That Roman mastery of structural volume flows from antiquity directly into the great domed cathedrals of Europe and the wide spans of the industrial age. The Roman Empire tried to scrub the Golden House from history, yet the engineering leap achieved within its walls became the standard for large-scale structural space, living on in the buildings that followed.